right, so we seem to be missing a gavel, so we'll just get started if we could, please. I'd like to call this the Assembly Committee. There we go. Assembly Committee on Ways and Means and Senate Committee on Finance Subcommittee on General Government to order. If you would please call the roll.
Senators Buck, Senator Taylor, Neal, Assembly Members Backus, Koenig, O'Neill, Torres Fawcett, Watts, Chair Anderson.
And I am present. Thank you so much. So we only have one department that's presenting, but do you have more than a few budgets that you're going to present today? So whenever you're ready, you can come on up to the table and get started when you feel ready, I guess. Wow, that's the same word twice. Oh, well.
Good morning, committee. Chair Anderson, thank you for allowing us to present here to you today. I'm Joy Grimmer. I'm the director for the Department of Administration. The department currently has 414.8 FTE, and 16 FTE were added during the interim. The overall vacancy rate as of February 1 for our department is 11.16%. With me today, we have Administrator Dean Hardy, Hearings and Appeals Division in Las Vegas. Bashira Washington, Administrator of the Human Resource Management Division, and Daniel Marlowe, Administrator of the Administrative Services Division, both here with me. We also have additional staff in Las Vegas and here in Carson City if you have any other questions that we cannot answer.
So I think we might be having a little bit of a difficulty right now with the
it's not
PowerPoint.
Skipping.
Doesn't seem to want to move. It happens. Dr. Taylor would like to help out.
Thank you. Okay. And then with that, I will turn it over to Dean Hardy in Las Vegas.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. As you just heard, my name is Dean Hardy. I am the Senior Appeals Officer for the Department of Administration, Hearings and Appeals Division, and we are charged with hearing all of the contested industrial insurance issues. In other words, when someone's injured on the job and if they have an issue with the administrator of their claim, that litigation goes through the Department of Administration. We are currently funded for 51 full-time employees and also, of course, associated operating costs. As you can see from the screen, we had an increased funding for small equipment, relatively minor at $3,932 for each of the next 2 years. And any of the members of the committee can feel free to stop me at any time and ask any questions. We had, secondly, an increase for our business productivity suites, which are across 11 courtrooms. We currently have 8 appeals officers in Las Vegas, 3 appeals officers in Carson City, and each of those appeals officers has a productivity suite so they can conduct business through the courtroom. The funding for an appeals officer position was added during the interim legislative period. That is item number 3, contained at E330, or excuse me, E300. And if there are no questions, we can proceed to the next slide.
You know, I think we'll, thank you so much, Director Hardy. I think what we'll do is just go through the whole process and then we'll do all the questions at the end.
Sounds fair. Thank you. We had a need for interpretive services in the courtroom. As you might expect, we have different individuals coming in with different languages. That was a need for $12,000 over the course of the next several years. Licenses for support network switches for the next year is $0, but the following year increases to $24,555. We have a court recording system, and that support and maintenance, of course, is a matter of about $5,500, and then computer hardware and software for the next 2 fiscal years, or for the next year and thereafter, $16,284. And that is the increases. That is the increase that we asked for, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you so much. And we do have a few questions. We'll start off with Senator Neal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, how has the existing unclassified appeals officer position allowed the division to address the existing and projected workload to manage complex appeals cases?
Dean Hardy. The increased workload necessitated the addition of an appeals officer, and that has allowed us to completely satisfy the statutory requirements of setting the initial cases in a timely fashion in accordance with the statutory mandates. There is currently no backlog. All initial settings are done within the statutory timeframes, and that was because of the addition of the additional appeals officer.
I have to follow up. I'm not actually tracking the response. So you're saying that there's no backlog?
Dean Hardy, that's correct, Senator. We have plenty of cases that are within the system, but there's no backlog. Cases that are heard at the first level hearing officer level, are usually heard and decided at the initial setting. We have currently about 300 new cases filed per week in Las Vegas at the hearing officer level, and about 100 cases filed at Carson City at the hearing officer level. And those cases are set at their initial setting within the statutory guidelines. They are heard and decided usually without continuing, without any changes in the initial setting. Now, the appeals officer cases are set for an initial setting within the statutory time frame, but they almost never go forward at that initial time frame because they are a much more complex setting. They require witness testimony, sometimes medical testimony, sometimes independent medical examinations are necessary. And so the cases don't usually go at the appeals officer's level during the initial setting, and they're reset for what's called a date and time certain after appearing on a stacked calendar. Sometimes they go, sometimes they do not. And there are a lot of reasons why a case may sit in our tribunal for some time. Sometimes it's the issue of getting that medical testimony and coordinating that. Sometimes it's the issue of coordinating an independent medical examination to understand the issue of medical causation. Sometimes it's a matter of an attorney not being ready to go forward. We're always 100% within the statutory time frame that we are required to be, and we are always we are always prepared to go forward at the initial setting at the appeals officer level, in addition to the hearing officer level. But at the appeals officer level, we're prepared to go forward, but the case is not prepared to go forward, and so the attorneys will take them off and set them for some time down into the future.
Thank you for that response. So based on what you just said, so that's driving that 17.2% increase, because there's so in my notes in appeals in 21, there were 5,400, and then there were 7,000 in 2022, and then in 2023, there were 8,200 appeals. So based on what you just said, that's what's driving that increase. the medical, the complexity?
Dean Hardy again. Senator Neal, I think there are multiple factors driving the increase. And you will note from the dates that you just cited, that was post-pandemic. And after the pandemic recession subsided, of course, there was an increase in building and construction, especially in the Las Vegas and Reno areas, with an increase in construction and building and the concomitant increases in also the other support infrastructure. Undeniably, you're going to have an increase in industrial injuries, and with an increase in industrial injuries, undeniably, you're going to see additional contested issues. So I think that's part of the driver for those fiscal years. We've been able to maintain within the Department of Administration's Hearings and Appeals Division, we've been able to maintain what we are required to do, and that is hear and decide cases. We feel very, very encouraged by the fact that we are always within the statutory time frame, and we are always ready and capable of hearing any contested issue in workers' compensation. That being said, Senator Neal, it is incumbent upon the attorneys that are representing the various parties to move the case. If they're not prepared to move the case, then there's not much we can do. If they tell the judge that's hearing the case, we don't have a medical report we're waiting on, we don't have an independent evaluation scheduled that we're waiting on, a witness testimony is unavailable for that date, that's why there are cases that are sitting within our tribunal.
Madam Chair, just one follow-up.
Please.
So just final question. So for the appeals officers, how many cases does each officer handle?
Dean Hardy, Senator Neal, a tremendous question. They are right now, somewhere between 1,000 and 1,400 cases being handled by each appeals officer.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for those questions. Assemblymember Bacchus.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. And Officer Hardy, I just had a follow-up question because I know when we sat here 2 years ago, the appeals officers were having a lot of backlog. And one of the resolutions was, I think they were going to implement AI to assist with writing decisions. And I was just curious if that's, now that we're looking forward now, like I guess looking back after 2 years, if that's really helped with the backlog and getting those post-pandemic appeals that kind of got bottlenecked resolved. I was just kind of curious how that ended up working out.
Dean Hardy, Assemblywoman Bacchus, there was an attempt at AI, and it was found that the best resolution that we could have is the implementation of an electronic filing system. And so we are in the process currently. That has been a process that started approximately 15 months ago, and we are very, very, very close to implementation. I can tell you that we meet with our outside vendor at least once and mostly twice per week. We have an internal group within hearings and appeals that meets once to twice a week. In addition to the meetings that we have with our outside vendor, we believe that the implementation of electronic filing is going to make the operation at hearings and appeals so much more efficient and so much more responsive to all of the stakeholders. It's going to lower costs for everyone across the board. It's going to make us much, much more efficient. And we found that the operation of our system electronically is going to exponentially increase our efficiency versus AI. Now, I'm not a tech person that in terms of AI. We've looked at it. It's been explained to me on a lot of different levels, and we've got an internal IT person, and we're looking at those things. But with the implementation of electronic filing, we think we're going to be light years ahead of where we are. And unfortunately, we're one of the last tribunals in the United States to implement electronic filing, and I'm sorry to say that. We're a little bit behind, but it is coming. I cannot tell you that it is imminent, but we are very, very close to launching electronic filing at hearings and appeals. And I will tell you that you will be speaking to some of the stakeholders, of course, through the legislative process. And that might be one of the questions you can talk to the stakeholders about, because they're all excited about the implementation of the electronic filing system.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you so much. Let's move on now to budget, the Merit Awards Board, if we may.
Good morning, Bashira Washington, Administrator for the Division of Human Resource Management. So the Merit Award Board is a statutory authority under NRS 284030. The beginning of 2024, I moved the responsibility for the Merit Award Board from one section of DHRM to another, to consultation and accountability. When they received the program, it had a large number of unaddressed suggestions and no substantial activity for approximately 1 year. What they did was they addressed the suggestion backlog, and they're focusing on following up with unresponsive agencies. A couple of other things they did was provide us, the suggestion form was updated. They created a dedicated email address for submissions from staff, and then the tracking was moved from paper files to electronic.
Joy Grimmer for the record. There are no decision units in this budget account. Currently, what you see on the slide, the funding is the result of $25,000 for merit awards and $3,000 for administrative funding that was appropriated in AB 239 during the 2023 legislative session. We are not currently aware of any legislation at this time that would make an appropriation this biennium. And with that, I will take any questions.
Thank you. We do actually have some questions. Assemblymember Bacchus.
Thank you so much. And I know like that funding stemmed from the Sunset Committee's review, and thought it was important to keep the Merit Award Board going forward. My first question, Madam Chair, I may have like 3 questions. Is that okay? My first question is, was the $3,000 to fund that board sufficient over this last biennium? I understand there were reasons that they didn't meet until February 9th, 2025, but just wanted to make sure, one, whether that funding was appropriate originally.
Joy Grimmer for the record. Yes, it's been sufficient. Thank you.
And I guess, Ms. Grimmer, let me ask it this way, because there was only one meeting, and it was in the second biennium right before basically this, well, it's just this session, actually. Gosh, a couple days ago. It's been a few months, it feels like. But with that $3,000, if this program kept going, would that $3,000 be adequate for a biennium to keep that board moving forward to consider those suggestions?
Joy Grimmer for the record. Yes, it would.
And then with that, can you please provide a summary of the types of suggestions and recommendations that have been received and reviewed by the Merit Board this fiscal year, and indicate how the board determines whether or not to issue an award?
Bashira Washington for the record. Be happy to provide that information to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I just didn't want to put you on the spot, but I appreciate that. I'm just excited to see that we did have one award, the $750, and it's nice to have those that are working within our state to make good suggestions, because they're on the ground. My next question is, please indicate why no funding was recommended by the Merit Award Program for the biennium other than the $750, and what the plan is to fund this I know you really don't have it fund the program going forward.
Joy Grimmer for the record. I am not aware of any legislation at this time that gives an appropriation to the Merit Board.
I guess the question was, maybe you just didn't put any suggestion in the budget, but why was there no recommendation to continue funding the Merit Award Program?
Joy Grimmer for the record. As we built the budget, there was only so many deck units that could be ranked and so much budget and general fund appropriations. And because of that, this was not given an appropriation.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you for that clarification. And if you could make sure to provide that report to all of us, that would be wonderful. Or just send it to the Ways and Means Secretary. Thank you. So let's move on to the Fleet Services Budget Account 711-1354.
Okay, Administrator Burgess is not with us today, unfortunately. So I will be doing the presenting for the Fleet Services Division. The Fleet Services Division has 16 employees and operates a large, modern, and environmentally friendly fleet that focuses on customer service, efficiency, and professionalism. The current fleet size is approximately 1,380 vehicles. There are 3 facilities, one in Carson City, one in Reno, and one in Las Vegas. In fiscal year 2024, fleet service vehicles, including those rented from outside agencies, traveled more than 9.3 million miles, or 27 miles per day per vehicle. Short-term rentals fulfilled by the division were over 4,590. Decision Unit E336 is for inmate payroll. Oh, can you go back one? Sorry. Sorry about that. E333 is inmate payroll. The division utilizes Department of Corrections inmates to supplement state personnel that are needed for vehicle and building maintenance. E334 asks for one Fleet Specialist 1 position in the Carson City facility to provide support to the division and the administrator.
I'm going to stop you really quickly. I need to find where I am. So if
Okay.
you can just give me just a second. Thank you. Thank you so much. Was just double checking something. Please continue.
Okay, E335 adds one Fleet Services worker position in Las Vegas to provide additional support with vehicle rentals, repairs, and maintenance. All of these workers also drive the fleet bus to go and pick up customers from the airport and bring them back to the rental facility. There are 669 vehicles assigned to the Las Vegas Fleet Services Division, and there's a large number of maintenance and repair work that has been outstanding that are driving the ask for this position. E336 would add 225 licenses for Asset Works for Fleet Services Enterprise Asset Management System. This is used to track the vehicles and the maintenance on the vehicles to keep it on schedule. E712 funds the replacement of 173 agency-owned vehicles, and E277 is for the purchase of 90 new vehicles in fiscal year 2026, and both of those are a one-shot appropriation.
So we do have a few questions for you. We'll actually start with Assemblymember O'Neill. Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes, Assemblymember O'Neill.
That's me. I am. I'm here to teach. I'm not sure you can answer these since Mr. Burgess isn't here. But on the vehicles we're purchasing, are they the fuel? Are any of them EVs, or are we still using LP gas vehicles down in Vegas? Do you know?
Joy Grimmer for the record. The majority of them will be hybrid. We will have no full EV plug-in vehicles purchased this session.
Oh, and are we still using the gas, the liquid?
Flex fuel,
Yes, thank you.
we have 435 in the fleet.
Are they all down in Vegas? Have we've had any, I've been told that there may be problems in maintenance with them.
Just 1 minute, please.
Did I cause you a problem? I apologize.
We've all had to phone friends. It's
Hi,
quite all
friend.
right.
She's from Fleet Services, so.
Ah.
Hi, I'm Christina Duncan.
Don't forget about hitting the mic.
Hit
We've
the
all
mic.
been there, Miss Duncan.
Sorry.
It's quite all right.
I'm Christina Duncan with Fleet Services. I'm sorry, can you ask the question again?
I heard from a couple state employees that they've had problems when they've used the, I call them the liquid gas vehicles with maintenance on them. Actually, they've had problems out in the street when they're using them and have been towed back in. I was just curious if you have any study on the difference between the maintenance of our regular gasoline vehicles versus now the hybrids. And I was going to ask about the EVs, but we don't have any, correct?
No, we currently have 57 EVs.
Don't forget to state your name.
Joy Grimmer for the record. In the appropriation that we're asking for, we're not asking for any
Asking
more,
for it.
but we have 57 in the current fleet.
Do we know the difference, if there's any maintenance cost difference for the various vehicles in the fleet, the fuel that they're using, particularly the liquid gas?
Christina Duncan, I'm not aware of any differences between the two.
How about in training for our personnel on maintenance?
I would have to get back to you on that one, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair, for the
Ms.
time.
Duncan. Next up, why don't we go with Assemblymember Watts, because I believe it's in the same topic.
Thank you, Chair. And following up on my colleagues' questions, there actually was legislation passed last session to encourage the procurement of vehicles with the lowest life cycle cost. So considering fuel costs, maintenance costs, insurance, et cetera, as well as any incentives that may be available. So I guess not to put you on the spot right now, but I think there are some differentials in those costs. So if you could follow up, I think, to this committee with some information and how you're evaluating fuels with different, or vehicles with different fuel types to figure out which options are the most appropriate. It's a bit surprising to me, actually, that I know that EVs are not the ideal application for every vehicle in the fleet, but it's a bit of a surprise to me that we're not acquiring any more, given that they traditionally have lower operating and maintenance costs compared to other fuel vehicles. So not as much of a question, but just a request for some additional information on how you're making those determinations about which vehicles to procure.
Joy Grimmer for the record, yes, we will get that information and get back to you. I can add that the infrastructure that we have available at state buildings is not quite sufficient to charge EVs. It's been very expensive to implement that, and Christina could give more on that. But that is one reason that it's hard for us to get them deployed quickly.
Thank you, and we'll continue that.
Thank you. Next up, we'll go to Senator Buck.
Thank you so much, Chair Anderson. Could you discuss the anticipated benefits to the daily operations of Fleet Service Division, as well as the ability to serve state agency customers by adding this one new fleet specialist position?
Okay, this position would support everyone that is in the, you're asking about the one in Carson City, correct? It would support everyone in the division. It would work a lot with the administrator and the fleet specialist too. It would also be in charge of the time-consuming tasks such as accident subrogation and recording the data for the vehicle telematics operations. We get a lot of good data on that, and right now we don't have anyone that is able to fully analyze it.
Thank you. And just one more. Also, kind of discuss the challenges in keeping up with the vehicle maintenance services and the anticipated benefits on adding one new fleet service worker position in the Las Vegas office.
Joy Grimmer for the record. So one of the things, repairs that are done internally are your normal, and I'm not a mechanic, your your vehicle, changing the oil, that type of thing. We do those in-house. Things that are time consuming are getting the vehicles back and forth from the dealerships for warranty repair work. So that takes someone that has to drop it off, go pick them up, all of that, and it takes them out of the office for the day. So that's one of the things that when we say repairs, it's really that we need people to do the maintenance, but also take them to the dealership to get actual repairs done.
Thank you. Next, we have Assemblymember Torres Fawcett.
Thank you. And I think kind of building on that conversation around repairs and servicing those vehicles, understanding that it depends on the repairs that are necessary. On average, how long is a vehicle out of service and therefore unavailable for the state agency to use when it is awaiting service or repairs within the division? And how does this division accommodate the state agency's needs while those vehicles are waiting repairs or services?
We can get you exact information, Joy Grimmer for the record, but we're estimating approximately a week, and we do give them a loaner vehicle when we take theirs for maintenance.
Just a quick follow-up. So how many vehicles are generally used for loaners or stored for loaners?
Joy Grimmer for the record, I'll have to get back to you with that information.
Thank you. Next up, Senator Neal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. How many inmates do you guys use in the Fleet Division?
This is Christina Duncan. We actually are only requesting one in our Carson City office.
In the past, how many have you used?
One in the Carson City office.
And how much do they get paid?
I am unsure.
So when I asked, it's about $2.50 an hour. So what kind of work do they do?
They would be doing any maintenance on the buildings that we don't need buildings and grounds for, and they would be doing car washes and assisting in any repairs that our staff need.
So,
Thank you, Ms. Duncan.
yeah, so follow up. So the inmate who are these, tell me what their status is in NDOC. Like what kind of, are they in a reentry program? Are they like, they're 18 months out, they're getting ready to be released? Can they get this, do they get some kind of certificate? Is there work that they can do that you're having them do on the outside?
Joy Grimmer for the record, I am not aware of that, but I do see what you're saying, and I don't believe we have a program like that, but it would definitely be something to look into with corrections.
Yeah, it's of interest to me because I've had convict leasing for like 2 sessions, and I'm doing it again for the 3rd session, which is using prisoners at a low wage to do work and $2.50. And so I'm wondering, right, how many hours, what does that translate into? Because ultimately, right, I know that, there's incentive and, but I also know that when they get paid, that wage goes to room and board.
Joy Grimmer for the record. We will discuss this internally, and then we'd be happy to further discuss this with you if possible. At this point, we do not have a program for that, though.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Senator. And if you could keep all of us on the committee aware of it, because but the senator, I believe, is the lead on this and has been working on it for many years. It's very problematic. Any other questions? Seeing none, let's move on to the next. Thank you so much for coming to the table. Let's go to the administration agency HR services.
Bashir Washington, for the record. So the Agency Human Resources Services provide full HR support for over 51 department and divisions with 300 or less employees across the state. Those services include recruitment, employee relations, new hire orientation, HRIS, and any leave program. Right now, there are currently 18 FTEs in that agency, 125 budget accounts with over 3,000 employees that we service. With this, we are requesting for E330 the ability, excuse me, to provide travel and training for the employees that work in the Carson City office as well as the Las Vegas office, and in E345 to make the intermittent positions that we currently have to full-time, permanent positions. So to provide some highlights for the Division of Human Resource Management, our recruitment team has worked hard to bring, the vacancy rate down in the year from 24% to 13.04%. We've conducted 3 hiring events, 1 in Carson City and 2 in Las Vegas, which resulted in on-the-spot hiring for 121 employees in Carson City and 106 in Las Vegas. Our next hiring event will be in Las Vegas on March 4th and the 5th at the Las Vegas Convention Center. Labor relations, we are in current active negotiations for all 13 bargaining units at this time. In addition, what we've done this year is we've centralized our EEO, SG, HDIU unit and moved all existing EEO officers that are across the state into DHRM. This was to provide a neutral environment for employees to be able to share their concerns and enforce the laws that prohibit discrimination. We also created an EEO email box for employees to provide information in a confidential forum. With the addition of our EEO officers moving into DHRM, we have significantly reduced the time that it takes to investigate a complaint. When I first became a part of the team, there were only 2, the administrator and 1 EEO officer. Since then, in combining all, we have a total of 8, and under direction of Kimberly Smith, who's the administrator, they have done a phenomenal job in reducing the backlog that we had with our investigations and bringing them current. The payroll team for 2024 processed over 18,500 transactions. And this does not include vendor payments or any of our required tax regulations. There was a need to hire a deputy administrator over payroll that has the accounting, auditing, and compliance experience that we needed. We also recently hired the state payroll manager. That position was vacant for a few years, and we are currently filling the remaining positions with experienced payroll and accounting employees. So the payroll team is essentially 100% new staff, and they came on board with no written processes and procedures on how to manage I call it a grandpa system, computer system. They have worked, our payroll fiscal team has worked tirelessly with OPM's team to ensure that our current system, Advantage 2, remains stable until we can integrate into the new system July 1. So with that, I am requesting 2 additional accounting technicians to join the payroll fiscal team to help just to ensure the compliance and provide auditing support and help support the large number of transactions that we see every pay period. The Office of Employee Development will soon open nominations for department employees to apply for Class 22 of our Certified Public Manager program. We're also reviewing our current mandatory supervisory classes and our supervisory academy, which today is not a mandatory academy. And we are creating 1 mandatory supervisor academy program. The curriculum will focus on labor laws, understanding our CBAs, progressive discipline, as well as ensuring that our new supervisors, our new leaders for the state, have the foundation of supervisor leadership. Classes such as temperaments and emotional intelligence as well. So here I'm asking for 1 additional training officer for the Office of Employee Development. That person will not only assist with the certified public management program, but will also lead the supervisory academy as well. The deputy administrator over the payroll is a current intermittent position. I asked for permanent funding for that position as well. And with that, I am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, and we do have a few for you. We'll start off with Assemblymember Watts.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to start, I think you covered a couple of budget counts here. I'd like to go back to the agency HR services, budget account 1360. And, you know, I see that we had these intermittent positions that we're proposing to make permanent. Looks like across 2 different budget accounts. My understanding of it is those intermittent positions were created to support the Smart 21 project, and then were kind of transitioned as that was canceled and we moved into Core and V. And so that just kind of, because of all the different moving pieces there, I'm just trying to understand this a little bit better. So can you discuss a little bit how the impact of that change and the implementation of the Core and V project has had on the agency's ability to provide services to state agencies?
Bashir Washington, for the record. From my understanding, those positions did come over from the Smart 21 team. Since that time, we've put them to work in agency HRS to provide enhanced customer service, to continue to work with our agencies and have more streamlined processes. So right now, those individuals, because the Core and V, where they're at now, does not necessarily pertain to those agency HR services employees, they are focused on providing that customer service to our current departments.
Thank you. So I just obviously we're very excited about the potential of Core NV to create efficiencies across the state. And so I think because those positions were kind of repurposed, I'm trying to understand the nexus, or if there is a nexus. And so once the Core NV system is fully online, is that going to realize any efficiencies within the agency HR services? And do you think that these positions will continue to be needed at that point?
Bashir Washington for the record, 100%. The Core NV, the system coming live is completely different than what the current employees' services provide. So they do work with the agencies that agency HR services support and provide employee relations, ESMT processes, new hire orientation. They talk to the candidates in regards to offering positions. So that is something that is outside of the core NV. So yes, we will still need those positions.
Okay, so I think my understanding is that really this is an enhancement for this budget. Basically, there was determined that there was additional need to provide these services, and you just happen to have some folks that were there, some positions that were there, that got repurposed for that. Is that a fair representation?
Bashir Washington for the record. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Next up, I believe, Senator Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. Thank you for being here, and thank you for the presentation. I do have, Chair, if you'll allow, I do have a couple of questions. Chair, is that right? Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Before I ask questions, though, I do want to just applaud the leadership training. I don't think we do enough of that as a whole, and so I just applaud you for being forward-thinking in that. That being said, though, I want to kind of piggyback on what my colleague said in terms of the new positions, and I want to wrap my head around that a little bit. I'm sure you know this. The governor's recommended budget talks about serving fewer agencies, right, and kind of farming those out a little bit, if you will, because of the lack of staff. And so if you have a reduction in the number of agencies that you're serving, will you still need 3 full-time positions?
Bashir Washington for the record. Yes, ma'am. So the only agency that I believe agency HR services will, if it's approved, will not be servicing is B&I, Business and Industry. However, with that, what we did was create this methodology that agency HR services will provide full cycle HR services to those department and agencies with 300 or less employees. So there are a number of departments that we currently do not have under our umbrella, though they still use us for one way or another, but we will officially be moving them under our umbrella in July.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Washington. I just want to continue a little bit. So the line of demarcation is 300. Right, it's 300, and so that's clear. And then you have to draw a line somewhere. Can you tell me a little bit about not agencies, but departments that, the ones that are that have fewer than 300, and what services would you do, what you will be doing to support them, versus those that are 300 and above, and what you'll be doing to support them?
Bashir Washington for the record. So I can provide you a list of all of the departments and divisions that we will be servicing. That's 300 employees or less. Will be a full HR support. So any employee relations, we will handle their leave program, new hire orientations, recruitment processes. Everything that we provide services for currently for our current agencies, we will continue to provide to the new agencies.
Okay, so I'm sorry, but the departments with 300 or fewer, though, you're going to do that differently. Did I understand that incorrectly?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry, Bashir Washington for the record. So the threshold that we use for agency HR services to provide full HR services is the 300 employees or less.
Right.
So we will provide a full HR service mechanism for all of the departments that have 300 employees or less.
Okay, so thank you. So I need to make this a little bit more clear then. Will you do anything for the departments that have fewer than 300 employees?
Bashir Washington, for the record, 300 employees or less will be under the agency HR services umbrella. Those departments that have 300 or more employees typically already now have their own HR staff, one way or the other.
Okay, so I had it backwards. You're going to continue to serve the smaller ones because they don't have their own HR person.
Chair Watch, for the record, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so are there any metrics that you're using then for the staffing levels to make sure you provide appropriate services for those 300 or above? And then how do those metrics, really, how do you know you need more people, right? And so what are those metrics that you use? And then do those metrics indicate that you do need 3 more full-time people?
Bashir Washington, for the record. So using best practices from Society of Human Resource Management, SHRM, typically it is 1 HR for 100 employees. Right now, with the intermittent positions that we have, it's 1 HR to 300 employees. So I do not think we need additional staff for agency HRS. The current, with the intermittent positions that we have been able to provide a high level of service to those agencies, and we'll continue to do so with that level and that number of folks we have.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate the comprehensive responses, so thank you. Thank you, Chair. Appreciate the indulgence.
Thank you, and that actually brings up a question for me. I have the opportunity to serve on another subcommittee that Chair Watts and Chair Taylor had yesterday, and it feels like a very similar conversation about employee movement. Is this part of your collective bargaining agreements that you're speaking about, or that you're currently in negotiations with that you mentioned earlier? Or are people moved around without, it just feels like there's a lot of movement going on without always the employees being aware of it. What is that process? Is it they just get assigned, or is this a stronger conversation? Or is this something that is actually part of their collective bargaining rights as they speak about it in their contracts?
Bashir Washington, for the record. I'm not quite sure I understand your question. My current intermittent HR personnel, they're not being moved around. They are in agency HRS, and they are performing those services. They're not.
And I understand. My question was very muddled, so I totally understand that. Thank you so much for needing that clarification. It feels like with the Core Nevada project and how that was moved around, some people, and then also with the follow-up questions, it just feels like some people are just being told, well, you were in this, now you're over here. So is that transfer process part of the collective bargaining discussions, or is this something done at a department decision?
Bashir Washington, for the record. So I used the term BB before Bashira. I'm aware that the Smart 21 HR folks, or those, they were farmed out to other agencies, and we were lucky to get a handful of those positions. There is no process today and moving forward to move any employees to other agencies or other departments.
Thank you. And I realize maybe we need to have this conversation offline as well, if we could possibly continue it. Thank you so much. So I think I'm going to move on to Assemblymember O'Neill.
Thank you, Chair, for the time. Ms. Washington, I've got to compliment you on your work. Human resources is one of those love you, hate yous. I was a former state employee from basic entry all the way up into division chief. So I understand the challenges that you have, and I really do mean it when I say thank you, because it's your hiring practices, your training that you allow us to take and demand of us really set the standards for state employees. And because of that, I have hundreds of questions, but I'll try to narrow them down because,
You only get a few.
yes, that's what I was afraid you're going to say, Chair. On the supervisor training, I know lots of times we'll have temporary supervisors or people working as temporary supervisors in various positions. Are they required to take that supervisor training even though they're in a temporary? And I'll make that so I can get two questions in. Part B is, how long after a person gets promoted either to the temporary or to full-time supervisor do they have to take that supervisor training?
Bashir Washington for the record. Thank you very much. So if it's a temporary assignment, then that employee would not have to go through the supervisory academy. That would be considered working out of class, and because it's a temporary assignment, there would not be the requirement to take those courses. As far as the implementation of the new mandatory supervisor academy, my team is ironing out those that process right now to figure out how long to give a new supervisor, in order to complete those classes.
And if I may just make a comment, Chair, and offering to you a suggestion, I know at times, even from my own personal experience, I worked as a temporary supervisor for months on end because of our personnel shortage. So maybe you should consider that too, if after so many months that they do take that training, or the academy as you call it. But I just want to thank you very much for doing that, and thank you for the time, Chair. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And I believe we've had all those answers. So I really do appreciate that answer, because I think the supervisory staff is so important, and for them to have that training. I'm actually going to move into a different area, and that has to do with the payroll system, which is always fun to deal with. It sounds like there's been some delays in the past. We've had some individuals who have contacted maybe one or two of us on this body or some of our peers. Can you discuss the payroll system challenges that have caused delays in processing payroll, and the anticipated benefit of having 2 new accountant technician positions, and just basically the daily operations of the agency?
Bashir Washington for the record. I'm going to phone a friend as well that could discuss the system issues. As I stated before, my payroll team is 100% new. A lot of our systems and processes were not written down, and they have had a lot of trial by error in order to get things accomplished, and they have done an amazing job. And they've worked tirelessly over the weekends to ensure that we provide the service we are required to provide to the over 19,000 employees. There has been some delays when it comes to vendor payments, things to that nature, and I think Jack Robb can elaborate more on that.
Jack Robb for the record, Chief Innovation Officer in Governor Lombardo's office. This is an item with the coupling with Core NV, Department of Administration, HR, constant coordination with the Treasurer's Office, Controller's Office. Payroll is so dynamic when you have to put it all together. And advantage to, we've known it's been in trouble for a while, and that's why Smart 21 started, and that's why we have put an accelerated timeline on Core NV to get it up and running, because Advantage 2, we hold our breath every payroll. And we've had to hire back individuals. It is such an antiquated system. Current employees do not have the training to run that system, so we have multiple employees that are employed in OPM at this time, that their whole job is to babysit Advantage 2 payroll to ensure that we get payroll out. After this cycle, we have 9 left to do out of that antiquated system. With the transition to Core NV Financial, even though a paycheck is a financial transaction, it still comes out of the HR system, so we're reliant on Advantage 2 for that portion. When it came to migrating over to make the vendor payments to or deferred comp, to PERS, to PEB, to insurance and others, we had to work through that process because that comes out of the financial portion of Core NV. So there was some transfer of data between those two. We had to iron some things out. They were ironed out and moving forward. Little things like a 3 paycheck month. January was a 3 paycheck month. There's 26 pay cycles in a year. 12 months, it doesn't add up to 24, it adds up to 26. So January was a 3 paycheck month. It takes a lot of babysitting on 3 paycheck months because health insurance does not come out on that 3rd paycheck. So the system would go out and try to pick up that health insurance. So we had to continue to run the pay cycle multiple times. And every time you run a pay cycle, it's 12 plus hours to download, to revert the file and then run a new file. So it's a time-consuming process. And when you take that down, nobody else can do anything in it. So when you can't do anything in it, every pay cycle, there's people that change bank accounts, or you have new employees, or there's bank fraud on somebody's account, or something happens to a bank account. So then they become hand checks because they cannot be electronically sent over. And when we take those systems down, that delays our ability to get those hand checks out. We have changed that process to get the hand checks out without running them through the system. And then in the rears, run them through the system. What we were finding the delay was, anytime you run a pay cycle to make sure that everything is correct in the system so we can do a W-2 at the end of the year, that payroll has to go 100% through the system. And it was taking an extraordinary amount of time to get it through the system. Now it is imperative to make sure that those employees get paid on time, and we run it through the system in the rears. They actually get 2 checks. They have to give 1 back because we make sure that they have money in their hand, but then they get a 2nd check that they have to then sign back to the state so we know that it ran through the system right, so that all the deductions are correct, and then we can get them a W-2 out at the end of the year in a correct fashion. It is extremely complicated, and then you put in the complexity that the controller's office has to press buttons at certain times, the treasurer's office has to press buttons at certain times, an antiquated system and changes. It's been difficult.
Thank you for that detailed but also very informative answer. It looks like at this time there are positions that are being partially justified because of the changeover. Is there anticipation that we will continue to need these positions with the new payroll system, especially with the anticipation of like what that's going to do? In the long run, the hope is that we will not have to do that. But it seems that there is a possibility of the same issues possibly continuing.
Jack Grohl, for the record. The issues are going to continue until we go to the new system. Part of going to the new system is we are going to take employees to positive pay. Currently, we have a good number of employees that the system assumes that they worked 80 hours over a 2-week period. And the only time they submit a timesheet is if they have a sick leave day or a vacation day or a holiday, but the holidays are already built in. Something out of the ordinary or overtime. We are going to 100% positive pay, when we roll out the new system. We want the increased accountability and oversight to ensure that employees are paid accurately, which means they're not underpaid or overpaid. It is imperative that we make sure that we know who's getting paid what. You have shift differentials. There's all kinds of things that need to be reviewed. With the new bargaining unit agreements that come out, there's multiple things to be reviewed. So workload with the new system is not going down. There's a lot of things to review. So I would say that the number of employees that we've requested is justified.
Thank you. Then I believe Senator Bacchus also has a question.
Thank you so much, Chair. It's okay. Officer, CIO officer, I guess, Rob. Quick question for you, because I'm just trying to wrap my brain around it, and hearing a lot about Core NV. I'm trying to figure out where we're at, because we're saying the system's going to roll out July 1st. However, I'm taking it we're at a point where there's interfacing going on between the old system and the new system to make sure we're recapturing all the data that Advantage 2 has into Core NV. Is the problem, because you kept saying system, and that's what I'm trying to understand, is it that the new system Core NV right now is kind of trying to learn all of these nuances and is not ready to go live until it's able to capture that information? And that's like, for example, when you were saying the 26 pay periods versus a 24 pay period. Is that what we're dealing with? Or is it that it's the interfacing that is creating a challenge, that there's lapse of information? I'm trying to really understand what the issue with Core and VN is and where we're going to be, because on July 1st, we're not going to be sitting here. And so just trying to figure out what we need to do at this point.
Jack Roth, for the record, there really isn't an issue with Core NB. When we went live with the financial system, there was some delay in some payments for like the VOIA payments, deferred comp. We had to work out some things. That has been rectified within the first couple of weeks. We discovered where the errors were and got them taken care of. We will continue to struggle with Advantage 2. There's no way to get Advantage 4 H-up sooner than June 30. We know how fragile Advantage HR, the Advantage 2 HR system is. We would love to be off of that system today, but it is an extensive build to make sure everything is right, that we have the right classifications, the right pay cycles. The more I learn about it, the more complex it gets, and I'm amazed the complexity and how these systems have to integrate together. And we cannot get Advantage 4 HR up any sooner. There's not a problem with it. This is a crunch time frame as it is. If it was up to our vendor, they would have another year, but they understand the dilemma we are facing, and they're getting it done as soon as they can, and that is June 30 this year.
And Chair, just a follow-up, because I'm just trying, in my mind, I'm not a tech-savvy person, but I own a business. We've gone off different softwares onto new softwares, much smaller scale. And I'm trying to figure it out. I mean, I know we're kind of keeping Advantage 2 moving along to make sure payrolls are happening. And I assume that data is going to get exported as opposed to continuing to be interfacing. Like, we're going to export all that data off of Advantage 2 into Core NV, so Core NV takes over 100%, and then we're done with Advantage 2. Isn't Core NV going to take place of Advantage 2?
Jack,
we'll
for the record, June 30th, we turn it off, it goes away.
Thank you. Senator Neal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I just wanted to just go back to the comment where you said there isn't really anything wrong with Core and B. Can you break that down? Because we had a whole presentation from the controller just recently, and he was telling us everything that was going on.
Jack Groff, for the record, when I say there's nothing wrong with Core NV, that means the system is working. We are paying bills out of the system. Anytime you bring on a system as complex as Core NV, no matter how much you throw it through its paces in user acceptance testing, UAT. When you apply the real world to it, you're going to find holes. And any rollout you have in a system that's complicated, those holes will appear within the first 2 to 6 weeks of the system rollout. It is imperative that you identify those, you correct them, and move forward. I can tell you, when we shut off Advantage 2 HR, June 30, we're going to test the heck out of it to make sure it's ready to go, and we'll bring that thing live. But there's going to be something that no matter how much testing you do, you haven't accounted for. There's real life scenarios. There's other humans using it, and when I've brought out other systems, this is something I've done in my prior careers, is bring systems live. You throw hundreds of thousands of users or keystrokes at something, no matter how much you test, you cannot anticipate what your end users sometimes will do. A lot of times it's the novice users that find a pipeline that you didn't even know existed in your base core build, because your team is so intuitive on how this is supposed to work. You put a lot of users at something, they're going to find your weaknesses, and it's like I said, that 2 to 6 weeks is a crucial time frame after a rollout of the system to identify the problems, correct them, and get the system stable to move forward.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Assemblymember Watts.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question. I know that there's been a lot of transparency and reporting as the Core NV project moves forward. I was just checking, and it looks like the last reports that are on the project website are from November. I was just wondering when we can expect to have the December reports or even the January reports available.
Jack Rowe for the record. I apologize for not having those reports up. That's news to me. We will work on that this afternoon. I would have to say that our staff has been working a lot of times around the clock to make sure we get people paid, bills paid, all the other things. I think reports are nice to have, not a need to have, and right now we've been concentrating on the need to haves.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We definitely need our systems to be working, but I think the members on this side of the dais also need to have access to that information, so appreciate you working on that.
You'll see it this afternoon.
Thank you. Next up, still with Core NV, Assemblymember Koenig.
Thank you, Chair. So yeah, sticking with the Core NV theme here, I want to go back to the human resource component. Has the implementation increased the workload for your staff? And if so, when do you anticipate the workload returning back to normal?
Bashir Washington for the record. Yes, it has, to a point where we have to remember that Advantage 2, with the system being so old, there hasn't been any updates to it. And at times there's been Band-Aids put on it to fix this, and not knowing what's going to fix this could break this in Advantage 2. So my team has been working sometimes 6.5 days a week in order to ensure that employees are paid, our vendors are paid, and that their processes run without errors or issues, and if they are, they're working to get those fixed. So yes, it has created additional work for them, excuse me, but I am hoping that once we get into Core NV July, knowing that there's always going to be hiccups with a rollout of a new system, that double work or the extra work will subside.
Follow up if I may, Chair. And then once it is implemented, do you see operational efficiencies for human resources? You think it's going to be a benefit?
Bashir Washington for the record. Yes, sir, absolutely.
Everything good? Thank you. Good deal. Do you think there'll be any need for any additional permanent positions once Core Nevada is fully implemented?
Bashir Washington for the record. The additional accounting technician, not accounting, yeah, the accounting technicians that I've requested should be the only additional positions that I'm going to need for the.
Thank you so much. I believe our next question comes from Assemblymember Bacchus. I'm so sorry about that. That's quite all right. Let me double check one thing really quickly. We're moving to a different topic is why.
My brain is still fixated on Core and V. Thank you for going over this budget item. Can you please discuss the anticipated benefits of the Equal Employment Opportunity Centralization Initiative and the impact to those state agencies by organizing all EEOO positions under the Department of Administration Division of Human Resource Management?
Bashir Washington for the record. We have been able, with the moving all the EO officers into DHRM, we have been able to streamline our investigations. We have certified every last one of those EEO officers to be EEO investigators, to be able to be in compliance with performing those type of investigations. What we were finding with the EEO officers in the departments was that there was sometimes a lack of trust from the employees with those EEO officers because they were embedded in their department's HR. And quite frankly, sometimes they were doing HR-related work and not solely focused on the EEO portion that they were supposed to be doing. So there was a fear of retaliation, a lack of trust and confidence that those EEO officers that were in the department were looking out for their best interest. By pulling them into DHRM, to the centralized human resources team, and under the direction of an EEO administrator, Kimberly Smith, we've been able to, we're not going to eliminate the fear of retaliation 100%, but we have created a more safer environment for employees to feel comfortable to come outside of their department in order to just have conversations. It may not rise to the level of a Title VII complaint, but the ability to be able to speak to someone and have that discussion and get those options and suggestions from someone who is not a part of their HR has been beneficial.
Thank you for that. And Chairman, I have a follow-up on this. And there may not be any anticipated change in duties and responsibilities for those three EEO officers with the relocation into the Department of Admin Division of HRM is approved. But if with this new change and these three EEO officers' positions that are being sought to transfer, do you anticipate the duties changing? Because when you were talking, you kind of indicated that there's a perception that they were doing other work under the prior division. But will there be any changes in their duties and responsibilities?
Bashir Washington, for the record. I'll give the example of one. I won't name the agency, but we have one EEO officer currently who was with another agency that had not done one EEO investigation and did nothing related to what her job duty entailed and was actually doing HR support work. So it is very hard to go to an EO officer on those type of issues if they see this person intertwined in their HR processes. So we have moved them to DHRM. They are only doing EEO investigations. They have worked with about 6 agencies to do cultural competency training. They spoke with the Office of Military at their leadership. They are being so proactive in ensuring that our processes, we have policies being written up, we are creating training to go across the state to deal with any type of discrimination or just to educate everyone in regards to cultural competency or sexual harassment.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. Senator Neal?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the example that you just gave to Assemblywoman Backus about the person who didn't do any EEO complaints, what agency was she in?
Bashir, Washington, for the record, DPS.
Okay. Thank you for that. So I have a different question, but it's in the same vein, because I know that one of the EEO persons also that is being centralized came from NDOT, right? And right, like, I've been in this building for a long time, and there was always this historical issue because they had a civil rights officer that was assigned because of the disparity studies and different things that had been around since like 07. It was like 05, 07, and then there was another in 2011, and then they tried to do another one in like 2015, I think 2015. But what was happening with the EEO person over at NDOT? Because I know that there, I just distinctly remember there were, like back in the day, there used to be issues with the folks that were out in the field in regards to like sexual harassment.
Bashir, Washington, for the record. I'm not aware of those issues or concerns in NDOT. I know that that position is funded through highway funds, so we are ensuring that that EEO officer only deals with those EEO investigations for NDOT. I'd have to get more information for you, if you like, on that.
No, it's fine. And I'm just wondering about, like, in regards to the retaliatory environment. Like, because you said that word a couple of times, right? So when folks have fear of presenting something because if they're in the HR, right, were there issues of that it wasn't going to be confidential if they presented an issue to the EEO person who was nested in the HR department? And how are we mitigating, retaliation just in general, right? That's the low-hanging fruit, but that's a consistent behavior and activity.
Bashir, watching for the record. I want to make sure that I answer your question. So one thing that we, in pulling them out of the agencies, is to, because again, we can't eliminate it 100%, but there is always going to be that fear of retaliation if they go to an HR person or go to the EEO person that's in-house to speak to them about a concern that may not even be a Title VII concern, but it's a concern that this is the person designated to that I should be reaching out to. There's always that fear of my supervisor's going to find out, or this will be used against me in one way or the other. So by bringing that to a centralized unit, we're not beholden to any agency. We are completely separate and independent, and we try to ensure that we provide those employees with that safe space, that they can come to us and tell us what concerns or issues that they are having, and we can provide them with that information to seek guidance.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And are there any other questions regarding either of these budgets? Seeing none, let's move on to almost the last budget. Oh, wait, is this the last budget? And aren't you happy about that? So let's go with administrative services, please.
Good morning. Daniel Marlowe, Administrator, Administrative Services Division, Department of Administration. I still say the best bureaucratic title in the state. And like Mr. Leiser, I don't have a production team. Maybe we can team up because ASD is probably as exciting as ARPA reconciliation. ASD provides centralized fiscal and administrative support for 34 different client agencies and the capital improvement plan. This totals, as of this month, 110 budget accounts, and in the governor's recommended budget, a little over $2 billion of fiscal responsibility for ASD. We do this with a very dedicated 36 FTE, very small for the 12% of the executive budget that we support, and this is over 6 main functional areas. So with that, the Admin Services Division is requesting 3 material enhancement decision units. The first is E331, which requests a new Accountant Technician 3, an AT3 position. This position would serve as a lead accountant technician within the accounting section. The second enhancement decision unit is E332, which requests a new Management Analyst 2 position within our budget section. This position would create additional support for client agencies within the budget section, as well as provide a promotional pathway within that budget section, as our existing other positions are Management Analyst 3. I will note this gets us close to our goal or along the path to our goal in capacity, but not quite there. The last material enhancement decision unit is E334, which requests 2 additional administrative assistant 4 positions. These positions would serve as pay clerks. Presently, ASD only has 1 pay clerk to support, as of this morning, 798 active employees, up to 904 positions. One of the main duties of this position is the sole liaison for employees for central payroll, and they provide auditing and approving of timesheets, reviewing personnel actions, and complying, correcting, or adjusting documents. This enhancement would add necessary workload capacity, which directly affects the pay and livelihood of employees supported by the ASD. With that, I am here for any questions.
Thank you so much. And we do have a few. Assemblymember Torres Fawcett.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the very brief presentation. How would a new accountant technician position improve the oversight of the accounting section and ensure accounting and reporting requirements are completed in a timely manner?
Daniel Marlowe for the record. This position would serve as a lead AT. Currently, we have 3 accountant technician 2 positions. This would be a 3 position to function in that lead duty. Kind of 2 main areas that would be, the first would be the oversight of that accounting section, orchestrating the training, driving process improvement initiatives, and also be the primary contact for client agencies. We see about 200 emails a day into that accounting email, and having that AT3 position would alleviate some of that capacity. The AT3 would be that main contact, and then our existing accountant technicians would be able to focus more on quality control and kind of more of that production value in processing those transactions.
Thank you. Next up is Senator Taylor.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. You know, this is tight budget time, so we're always going to ask about new positions. And so I'm going to ask about the management analyst position that you've requested. How would it improve the operations in the budget office?
Daniel Marlowe for the record. One thing I will note with the budget analyst section, the 34 different agencies, 57 executive budgets. It's my team of 9 currently that build all those budgets. So they're doing all that data entry. As I mentioned, we have now 110 budget accounts in total. We have a target of approximately 8 hours per budget advisor is what we call them, to be able to support our client agencies. They don't have the fiscal staff within their agency to have that guidance on processes, fiscal guidance. This would add that additional capacity, allow us to kind of align some of those budget accounts and get that a little bit closer. Currently, based on the assignments, on average, the budget advisors are only able to spend about 5 hours per budget account. And that's not much when you look at the overall IFC work program, build questions during the session, fiscal guidance, budget monitoring. So this just provides that additional capacity based on that need. I will note our budget accounts have increased in number, but they've also become more complex. You see more IFC work program requests. We have a lot more categories. We have a lot more detail in the budgets. We have a lot more grants. And all of that is kind of driven through this budget section.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Chair, thank you.
Thank you. And I believe Assemblymember Watts.
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple questions. Hopefully they'll be quick. So can you just give a little bit of additional background on how the 2 new administrative assistant positions will assist with the payroll functions and improve the operation of the administrative section? And also, can you just provide a little bit of context? We were just talking about the payroll positions in HRM, so just kind of help me understand what, if any, connection there is between the payroll functions in administrative services and there.
Certainly, Daniel Marlowe for the record. As I mentioned, we have 1 official pay clerk in Admin Services Division to support these agencies. We have allocated my other administrative assistant who's generally to provide support for the agency. We've dedicated most of her time to help fill this gap. And we also have support from the Department of Admin Director's Office for additional capacity for the timesheets. Part of the issue with the pay clerk, if you will, is very strict timelines for production. Versus the accounting section, invoices, vendor payments can kind of pile up and we just get a backlog. We only have the week to approve timesheets, and any corrections are to be submitted by the next week. So there are very quick turnarounds for those, and that also requires work from employees submitting their timesheet, supervisors approving the timesheet, and then the pay clerk is the last in that chain. So it kind of drags on throughout the week, and we're also kind of at the mercy of when they're submitted or approved. So the additional positions would allow the other 2 positions that are providing support to be able to return to their normal duties, and just the added capacity. The number of personnel transactions that are processed every year have been increasing year to year. Every single one of those personnel transactions have to be reviewed and determine, is there a result from this that we need to submit a correcting timesheet, special pay, anything like that. And that's where the kind of information, our pay clerks compile, review all that information, determine, submit that documentation to, in this case, mainly central payroll, and then they process that information off off that. So, and that's not just ASD, that's the pay clerks throughout the state. So we're kind of phase one, and then central payrolls phase two, reviewing, confirming that information, and then doing those entries after the fact.
Thank you. That's very helpful clarification. That leads to my next follow-up, which is, and this is similar to some questions that were asked in other budget accounts. Is there any sort of workload, caseload of how many of those transactions a pay clerk should kind of be handling, so that we can get a sense of when you said those transactions are increasing, so when we know that we need to be looking at adding additional capacity and kind of what that appropriate workload looks like for an individual pay clerk?
Daniel Marlowe for the record. Approximately 250 or so employees per pay clerk is a good number, especially as Chief Innovation Officer Rob mentioned, all the employees moving to positive pay. That kind of means more detail and more lines that we have to review, but 250 is our personal benchmark.
Thank you. And then last question, going back to our favorite topic, Core NV. Do you see any potential changes in that workload or improvements once we fully implement the Core NV system?
Daniel Marlowe for the record, in relation to the pay clerk or ASD in general?
In relation to the pay clerks.
Daniel Marlowe for the record. We have not seen any aspect of the kind of build right now where we are with the HR side of Core NV, so we're not aware of any changes. We do at ASD. I spent a lot of time prior to the state in private industry with lean process improvement, so we're kind of always looking at revamping our processes and removing waste in our systems, and with new systems that generally helps drive that change as well.
Thank you. And I think, again, this information is really helpful to understand, again, how many employees a pay clerk should be kind of overseeing. And again, we're just trying to understand some of we know that the system just needs to be overhauled because it's on its last legs. We're also hoping that provides efficiencies and allows some of the work that's being done to be done quicker and more efficiently. And so that was the basis for the question, is just to understand at this time if you have any sense of if that's going to remain the case or if potentially pay clerks could handle more employees once we transition all of the systems over to the new Core NV. And it sounds like it's to be determined at this point.
Chair, if I may. Daniel Marlowe for the record. The pay clerk is kind of unique in that it's not just the system. Essentially any employee that has a question about how do I do my timesheet, what are the regulations that I'm allowed to use, sick leave or whatnot, or any question on their pay, goes to the pay clerk. And then we relay that information to central payroll. So the phone is ringing constantly with just questions, things come up. So I don't think the system improvements will improve the overall workload. It will change how that process and timesheets or maybe how we process things are different, but we will still have that customer service aspect that is critical to the employees to provide at an efficient level.
Thank you for all that clarification. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Thank you so much for the presentation. So we will close the budget hearing at this time, and we'll actually go on to our last thing on our agenda, which is public comment. If you'd like to provide public comment here in Carson City, please come on up to the table. Or if you'd like to also come to Vegas, or excuse me, provide public comment in Vegas, please come to the table. Anybody coming? Seeing nobody entering, just people putting their papers away to get ready to leave. We'll now check the phones. To provide public comment or testimony, please call 888-475-4499, and when prompted, please provide the meeting ID. Enter 837-7255. 7650, and then press pound when prompted for a participation ID. Is there anybody on the line?
Thank you, Chair. The public line is open and working, but we do not have any callers to provide public comment at this time.
Thank you so much, and thank you, committee. We are adjourned.